Hello, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 8. My name is Jay Oza, and I'm the host of Speech Talk Live. And today we have with us Julie Finlestein and Soymyan Tirumurti, who will be participating in this episode. I'm based out of Hazlet, New Jersey, which is about 50 miles from New York City. And the Speech Talk Live, now this is our 8 episodes, and we're learning quite a bit from doing this now. And what we try to accomplish in this 1 hour is to learn. That's the main objective, is to learn about public speaking. And public speaking is hard, as I always keep saying. It's not easy. It takes a long time to master. So this is an opportunity for me to learn, for you to learn, for all of us to learn together. Second is to teach, because some of us have been doing this for quite some time, and others are kind of new at this. So it's also an opportunity for us and others to teach each other if we know something that can help others. Third is to share. This is a place where if you want to get better, record your speech, bring it here, and we can give you live feedback. I take advantage of this as much as I can. I hope you do the same. And the fourth is to support. In this, the stakes here are really low. It's a stakes, nobody is ever going to get rejected giving a speech here. This is a place where everybody does well. That's what the purpose of coming on this show is, that if you have any kind of fear, this is the place to come to where we are going to support each other so that when we are out there, we can hit a home run, okay? Today's episode, we have 3 segments, and I think today's segments are really well thought out. The first one is going to be about about stories, why stories are so important when you're giving a speech. And rather than just talk about, these are the reasons, we're going to basically tell a brief story and illustrate it. So that's what we're going to try to do with that segment. The second segment, I have submitted one of my speech to be reviewed. And this was a persuasive speech that I did for the Coursera course, Introduction to Public Speaking. And the speech title is Term Limits Now. And as you can see, I use a lot of the techniques that we learned in that course for persuasive speaking, and I'll find out whether it was effective or not. And the third one is something I've taken a speech from way back. This was a speech that Richard Nixon gave. It's known as the Checkers speech. And I believe, even though this speech is given before most of us were born, but there is so much in the speech to learn from that even though some of the historical part are a little old, but as far as the speech making is concerned, it is still very relevant, and it can be used today to be effective if you want to get certain message out. And I think we'll have a nice discussion around that. So that's the segment. I hope you enjoy it. And at this point, I'd like the other participants to introduce themselves, and then we'll get going with segment number 1. Julie, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I'm Julie Finlestein, Julie Wu Finlestein. I'm a mentor at the public program, and I'm a fellow student, as Jay always like to say. And I am working on a speech on meditation, informative speech. And it's very, very challenging for me. I'm really enjoying the work. And my personal goal is to look at what are the skills for success. And I'm particularly interested in fashioning the skills, of selecting the skills that are both successful for the individual and for the corporation. So that, for example, meditation will be something that any individual who practices it will help themselves both in the personal sphere and the work sphere. And if a corporation would endeavor to sponsor a meditation program, they will find that the employees will be more effective at work, At the same time, employees will be happier as individuals, and that also contributes to effectiveness of an organization. So that is how I'm working on my informative speech. One of the things that I'm going to be talking about today is how I ask for help while doing my informative speech, and how that really helped me to become a better speaker. So with that, I turn it back over to Jay. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Oh, we have Lathesh just joined. Lathesh, we're just going through an introduction. So before we get to you, I'll have Soymyan give a little quick intro. He's having video difficulty, so we'll only be able to hear him. Soymyan, you're next.
Sure.
Thank you, Jay. My name is Soymyan Tirumurti, and I am one of the mentors in this course. I joined a public speaking course to improve my speech skills when I was official in the Wikimedia chapter in India. As a corporate executive, I never had much opportunity to speak in public. But then when I joined Wikimedia, I had to be an evangelist and need to talk about Wikimedia in most of the places where I went. So that's where I felt the need for improving my skills, and I joined here. I am also interested in doing some online training programs, and I've taken a lot of courses here, and I've also been trying out the various kind of techniques similar to the MOOC techniques that have been used, Khan Academy techniques, etc. And in that kind of a situation, also I found the need to speak into, for the purpose of recording the video was one of the important skills. Okay, so these are the two things which drove me to join this course. Definitely, I've been experimenting a lot with some video recording techniques also. One of the things I've been trying recently is to embed both a PowerPoint slide as well as a video in one shot and capture it as a screenshot. I've been having some kind of video difficulties and audio synchronization difficulties with that. Otherwise, I could have demonstrated one today. That's my primary interest now. Yeah, I'm through.
Okay, Lathesh, do you want to give a brief intro and then we'll get started?
Sure, thanks, Jay. Hi, Soymyan. Hi, Julie. So my name is Lathesh Balakrishna, and I'm from India, based out from Kochi, that's the south part of India. And I'm working in the software industry as a project manager. And I got more than 11 years of work experience presently working in this industry, and this is a platform wherein I joined with Jay and our colleagues here from various geographies across the globe. So it's like a good platform for improving our communication skills, and I've been attending these sessions for the past 5 to 6 weeks now, and I'm finding that it's a great area where I realize this platform for improving yourself, improving your skills with respect to public talk and discussions on various topics, etc. It gives you various facets of the dynamics involved in public speaking, as well as to connect with a team which is based out from various other entities. So that's a great experience. Yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then I'll introduce the next segment, and we'll get started. Okay. Okay. Again, welcome to Speech Talk Live. This is episode number 8, segment number 1. And in this segment, we're going to focus on telling stories, and specifically why stories are so important when you're giving a speech. So rather than talking about that, I thought it would be a good idea to just tell a simple story and then use that as a way to discuss this topic further, and then let others talk about whether they have a story that they want to share with us and make a point. Okay, so I'll tell a story about this. So this morning, as you all know, that I'm just recovering from a back surgery, and I have a physical therapy session in the morning. So as I'm ready to leave, I can't find my keys. I'm looking everywhere. I'm looking in my room, I'm looking in the dining room, I'm looking everywhere, and I can't find it. So then I just realized, oh, I know why I can't find it, because last night I had to pick up a car, my wife's car that was in the garage. It was already been repaired. And my daughter gave me a ride to the garage to pick up the car. So I found out that she had the key. So now I knock on her door and wake her up. And she's saying, Dad, I don't have the keys. You have it. And we go back and forth, and I just said, okay, I'll go to my wife. And I said, can I take your car, and I'll be back within an hour? She said, no, you can't take my car. I'll be leaving before you get back. So then again, I go back to my daughter's room and said, listen, you have to wake up, because I don't have the keys. You got to look for it now, otherwise I'm going to be late. So she gets up, angrily goes down the stairs, and finds it where the key was supposed to be, right where we keep all of our keys. Point is that in life sometimes we don't look at the obvious places where things should be. And I learned a pretty important lesson, that next time, if you ever lose something or if you're ever lost, look at the most obvious place first before go and look elsewhere. Anyway, so that's just a simple story that I just wanted to kind of relate to just kind of get started. I don't know if that was effective or not. That's only my first time I'm giving it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that when you want to make a particular point, it is very effective when there is a story that ties to that. People tend to understand it. It makes sense, rather than just telling you, hey, look at some obvious places. That's easy. That doesn't require much. But when you tie it to a story, you will tend to remember it much better. So I'll pass it on. I'll try. Julie, Soymyan, anybody else want to give it a shot and give your thoughts on whether you have a story to make a point? Julie, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Jay. So just this week, I had some challenges about making informative speech. So I reached out for help. I took so my example here is, when you get stuck, reach for help. And I'd like to share this experience with you. So I got stuck, it's been months, so I finally somehow got the gumption. So I did the video audition on how to create ideas. So I invented 10 ideas. I sent it out to Jay, Lathesh, I think Soymyan, and my study buddy with the speech group say, I don't know what else to do. Give me some ideas. And it was really useful. Lathesh, Marius, and Jay all came back with suggestions. And one of the key suggestions was that when I talk to people, like when I'm talking to you now, I'm pretty fine. But when I go to a video and make a speech, I stiff up like a zombie or a robot. So one of the suggestions was come out and pretend I'm talking to Jay or Marius or Lathesh or Soymyan, and I have found that to be enormously helpful. So then Jay generously spent half an hour with me and said, do this. And when we hung up, he said, go do it now. So I did it, and then I sent that out for share. So my point here is, when you're stuck, reach out for help. And wherever you are, that's fine. And if you know what you want help at, by all means, share that. But the most important thing is know that help is just a phone call, a gesture, an email away. So personally, I really benefited from getting that help. And hopefully, I made a commitment to Jay that in a couple of weeks, I'll share my speech with you here in this forum. So with that, I turn that back over to you, Jay. Thank you.
Yeah, Julie, that was excellent. See, that's a good example of how to make that point, putting a story, tying it to a story, helps us. It makes sense. It makes us understand it. Like you bring your personality into it. So I thought that was that's yours. You own that. That's your story, and you have to be willing to share it. And in the process of sharing your story, you're making a much important point that we can all take away. So that was really well done, and keep doing it. Soymyan, you wanted to go next?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have just some 3 stories to link together. I normally like to link multiple factors together from one topic to another. I want to flow. That's one thing I like. Okay, so I have tried to attempt that by linking 3 stories. The first is, I do a lot of management-related training I want to do. I mean, that's one of my areas of focus for future. So one of the things I have been trained during my own days was some quality systems. And in most of the quality system related training programs, they will always discuss some stories about Edward Deming. Okay, Edward Deming was an American professor who went and taught quality to Japanese, and using his teachings, the Japanese bet the Americans in quality, on particularly in the automotive industry. So Henry Ford was interested in getting Dr. Deming back to USA and addressing his own people, so he invited them. Okay, so this story has 2 small sub parts. One is, Deming asked his secretary to call. Ford asked his secretary to call Deming, and that never happened. After some 4 or 5 calls, he himself called, and Deming agreed. Okay. Then Deming went to conduct a 4-day workshop, and Ford came to inaugurate that event. And after make the initial inaugural speech, etc., Ford stayed back for about 5 minutes in the lecture hall in the front row. And once Deming started, talking, he just quietly walked away. That's the way most CEOs do. They just inaugurate something and walk away. Then, as Ford was walking on the corridor, he heard some footsteps behind, and he turned back to see Deming was following him. Okay, so then it transpired that Deming was annoyed that this, as a CEO, he did not show enough management commitment, and if he was not committed to listening to a lecture on quality, why should these people do? Okay, so then Ford went back and sat, and he sat for all the 4 days, and that's how Ford Motor Company made a transformation towards its own quality system. Okay, so that's one story. If I look at this, management commitment, etc., is very much emphasized. And I happen to work for a company called TVS Group in India, which is very heavily known for management commitment towards quality. And that's where I also got trained for quality, etc. And I had an experience to narrate. In TVS, everything has to be following a particular process and things like that. There is a lot of emphasis on process conformance and so on. So we used to believe in team-oriented problem-solving techniques and things like that. So there is a lot of brainstorming and such things that happen all the time. Or even the workshop, from our workshop, if you take some 4 or 5 operators, they can put together a nice quality story. Okay, so that's the kind of indoctrination on quality systems and things like that we had. Okay, so it so happened that when I participated in a meeting, I came to know that there is a new problem that came up. And immediately the management representative said, look, this must be now solved by the team-oriented problem solving, and immediately formed a quality circle, all that kind of stuff. Then when I heard about the problem, I found that it was something which was very obvious. The solution was obvious, and I narrated the solution in some few sentences. But then the management representative was a little upset that I was trying to sabotage a process-oriented approach. He said, nothing doing. Soymyan's solution should not be taken. Now you go ahead and do it as a team-oriented problem-solving solution. So the whole thing suddenly turned into a strong pitch for process orientation, and how people who are not following process are sabotaging the whole system and so on and so forth. And I was taken aback, and so I had to lie low. After about 1 month, the team leader came back to me and said, see, look, Soymyan, I want to hear your story. You had a session to make, and then which was not accepted by the team, the anchor at that time, and so I could not follow up with you. So what's the problem? It so happened that I had studied the subject, theoretically in college, and I knew what the problem was, and I had very, very strong clarity about that. And I narrated the whole thing to him, and within 24 hours, he went back and implemented that and solved the problem. So this underlines that even though strong management commitment etc. could be there, sometimes it can sidetrack and drag a person away, and we fail to recognize individual competency, which could be short circuiting many of these circuitous, process oriented, team oriented problem solving situations. So that's the second thing. A third thing which I feel that I find linked to this is I went through a training program in an institution called Center for Organization Development in Hyderabad, run by one Dr. Maheshwari. So during that exercise, we were about 40 people who had come from various organizations, and we had just come there and joined for the training. And we all were sorted into 4 groups and 10 members each, and asked to solve some problem. Okay, so the idea was to to underline how group problem solving techniques, team oriented problem solving techniques are superior to individual problem solving techniques. Okay, so it's again following the same thing. You want to believe in process, you want to believe in teamwork, etc. So this was to be a demonstration of that. So initially we were all given a long questionnaire. It was a jungle survival problem. The aircraft is supposed to crash in the dense forests of Assam, and people have to pick up some 20 items are there in the aircraft, and you need to say which of these 20 items are important for you, and you make a list of priority, so you can pick up those items and go down. Okay, so once you go down from the aircraft, you won't be able to get back there. So you need to prioritize and take whatever is important to you. So that's a challenge. So every one of us, it's a problem which is not at all related to any of our activity. None of us had that kind of experience. Okay, so it is a hypothetical problem as far as we were concerned. So we just let our imagination run wild, made a priority list, etc., and made a presentation. Then we were also okay. Now you sort out yourself into 4 teams, and we 10 of us got together in a team, and 4 teams were formed. We all discussed. One thing that happened was, since we had gone through that list as individuals, we all got biased very strongly to defend our individual choice, and there was a lot of quarrel and argument, and we were given 2 whole hours, but we came to a consensus only in the last 10 minutes just because time was running out. Till such time, we had not even progressed to identify the top 4 or 5 items. Okay, so then we quickly agreed on the rest of the items and things like that. The whole thing was video recorded. Okay, so then we were introduced to a army expert who was supposed to be a jungle survival expert, and he came and gave his priority list. Then we did a comparison. What was our individual score? What was our team score? And how much were these individual scores and team scores deviating from the army survival expert score? Okay, we were all amazed to see that practically all except 2 fellows, had a great degree of improvement in their score from their individual score to the team score. So that went to underline, look, team-oriented problem solving is superior to individual-oriented problem solving. Okay, so this was the conclusion that was drawn. Then somebody was curious and said, see, look, there are 2 guys who bet the team, who scored better than their team in terms of, being close to the army expert. Okay, so those 2 guys were asked to come up and say what their experience is, what is their background, etc. We found that they had some kind of experience of living nearby a jungle or in a jungle. Okay, so that gave them an additional edge to make a better judgment. Then the videos were played out. We observed all the tamasha in the video. We found that these 2 guys who had the expertise, personal expertise, were not encouraged by the rest of our team to even speak up. Nobody even took up, a skill inventory to say who has got some kind of a natural, talent or gift or context to have a better opinion. Everybody's opinion was considered equal. It was something like you vote on an issue without knowing who is the expert on what. Okay, so we found that those 2 guys were just not allowed to give any, were not given any opportunity to express themselves, and that's how they lost out, and they could not influence the team at all. This again went to dovetail with my own personal experience. I was an expert, and I was trying to provide a solution, but then the team-oriented problem solving, paradigm that made the entire team to say, look, we will park Soymyan, we will not take it up, we will do it in the team-oriented way. So while management commitment is important, while commitment for process, etc. is important, we should also have a good amount of weightage for expertise. This is the idea. My talk is over. Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, those are excellent examples, and I think, yeah, if you're ever like giving a speech with management and trying to explain that topic, I think those stories would be very useful because it'll get the message across, and rather than just stating that teamwork is good, I think a story captures that much better than just saying it. So I think that was very effective. And also, Lathesh, we're not giving you a chance to talk. Uh, do you have a story, Lathesh, that or go ahead? I'll let you talk.
No, I think it's fine, Jay. I think being the last person always gives me that leverage to escape with very small statement. So I mean, I will give a very short version of what I have experienced. Like rather like what we had a talk here. Like when you sent out this particular agenda for the speech. So I happened to discuss this with a colleague of mine, and she was just giving an example wherein like she said the importance of having a story can be said because in her experience, there was a meeting that was being arranged, rather a talk with a doctor. So the doctor is like he's supposed to come to the organization, to the company, and he's supposed to give brief about the occupational specific diseases, etc. So basically, because in IT industry being a sedentary activity, there's not too much of active involvement of going around, walking around, etc. So it's just like a sedentary job, sitting at a location. We need to keep working. So the person who was supposed to introduce the doctor was not present, and he was like a pretty like influential person, a top level management guy. So he told this colleague who was a fresher to introduce the doctor to the team. So it was a sudden decision, and then she said that in order to get the attention of the team, what she did is like instead of initially introducing the doctor itself, she mentioned that a case which was there at that point of time, a live example wherein like a person in the team who used to who was very fit. He was a very lean and a healthy looking personality. But at EY, we have this practice of providing free snacks during the tea time. So it was free snacks. So and it was most of the time it was like very calorie rich and oily food. Especially Indian foods are very rich in those aspects. So since it was free, the team used to go and gorge, and so this guy happened to only eat this in a larger quantity. So then what happened is like unknowingly, even though he looked lean and fit, but his cholesterol level kept increasing. And though at a very early age of 27, he had a heart attack. So giving this example, she was able to drive the attention of the entire team, and they just stood by. And then she introduced the doctor to the team, and then they all realized the importance of this particular talk that the doctor is going to give. So that's how powerful a story is to influence the audience to get their attention to the main topic. Yeah, that's from me, Jay. Thanks.
No, that's a very good point you made, and the story is something. I mean, we can spend a lot of time on it, and we need to move to the next segment. So, the reason why stories work is because through the beginning of time, we've been brought up. We've been hearing stories, whether it's religious text or anything, and stories is how we essentially make sense of our world, and they're always effective. And people should use them, but the other thing is practice them because telling stories, having a story is a good thing, but you also need to be able to practice the story and tie it into a larger point that you're making so that later on people will remember it. So I'm just going to do a quick test. Let's see, I'll test Julie first. So Julie, what was my story?
Okay, your story was about before you go for help, look at the obvious places.
All right, Julie, you passed. Let's see. Let's see. I'm going to test somebody else. Soymyan, what was Julie's story? Yes.
Well, I'm sorry. It seems to slip my mind. It has gone behind.
quickly, what does Julie?
Hello.
Yeah, what was Julie's story?
Yeah, as I told you, I mean, it's in fact when Julie was narrating yours, I could not recollect your story.
Oh, okay, no, not mine. It's a quick, like,
Yeah, no, I am unable to recollect Julie's story as well. So I think I have a very bad memory.
Oh, okay. Julie, you didn't do a good job. All right. Lathesh, do you remember Julie's story?
Sorry, I was mute. So I had helped Julie with setting up the agenda and firming up the objectives. So I remember the story.
Right. So Julie, okay. So maybe Julie's good at, because one thing is Julie has a really sharp ear. She really processes everything that you're saying. So maybe this was an unfair question to ask you guys. So I got lucky. Because if you ever notice, Julie will tell you exactly what you're saying. Okay, she has that amazing talent. So maybe that was not fair. But Julie's story was actually very good, because what she was saying was that if you should go and ask people for help, but even more so, they're more likely to help you if you're actually doing something. Then people know that you're committed to it. So she was making a larger point of that with her own personal experience, recent experience. I thought that was a story. So anyway, and Lathesh, you want to take a shot at one of Soymyan's stories?
Sorry, Jay?
You want to take Soymyan gave us three stories. Do you remember any of them and what the larger point he was trying to make?
Yes, Soumyan's stories were like pretty informative, and he was discussing about his work experiences at his organization, especially how he was able to, he was basically putting the point that management the way management has some objective in mind, and how it has to be, it has to be, even if it has to be put in place or it has to be driven, the individual contribution also plays an important criteria. So that's the looking at the bigger picture, he was driving home the point that we need to not only go by whatever objectives or the vision that the management wants the employees to do, but also take into mind the factors that would have actually changed the paradigm if they have considered the individual contributors' opinion as well.
Good. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he had some excellent stories there about Deming and Ford, that the executives have to be committed if you want other employees to be committed too. And then the other one, the last one, was about the wisdom of crowds, that if you take people, they're more likely to be able to come up with a solution than individually. So those are excellent stories. So to close this section out, one of the things I want to point out here is this, that when you're telling a story, and I don't know if any of us has really rehearsed this, but you do need to rehearse stories. Stories are very important, and most people are really not good at telling stories. You should never be telling a story for the first time to somebody without first practicing it to see how that comes across, okay? So I think all of our stories could be made much better if we practiced it more, and we would get to the point, because in this format it's hard to be interactive, right? Because you have to pretty much finish your story and then only the other person can talk. So this is not really the good format. Still, it works. It's better than not telling a story. But the point is that you really do have to practice story like you're practicing a speech. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective. And how you tie in the larger point. The more you do it, the better you become. So to close it out, Julie, any comments?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, any closing thoughts on the story before we move on to our next segment?
Okay, I just want to say that there was this list called Pro Gymnast which one of our mentor colleagues had proposed long back. But in that they talk about many things. One is fable, another is anecdote, the third one is short stories like this, and so on and so forth. So, in fact, even trying to bring up some parables, Aesop's stories or Jataka tales or Panchatantra or any of those kind of things also would often be very useful, in a speech situation. You are trying to break a monotony. You are trying to bring in a very familiar story, and to quickly drive home a point. You can say the same thing in other ways also, but then a story which is well known to people, when narrated in a very brief manner, properly ties it up.
Great. Lathesh, any closing thoughts before we move on to our next segment?
Yes, I think Jai and Julie and Soumya has mostly covered the important aspects of storytelling, but I think something that we have grown with, and that is when if you look at that's all like telling a story. And even if it is a gossip that is about like talking about somebody else, like people are having their ears out for listening to those kind of things. So stories are the thing which normally attracts a person to listen to what the talk is all about. So I think that's how powerful a story is to is to be used for any kind of talk or public speech to get the attention. Thanks.
Great. Julie, any closing?
I also want to underline one more thing. If you see most of the management training programs, they will all be based on case studies. Case studies are stories.
Exactly. No, that's a good point. Julie, any closing thoughts?
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, I appreciate that you bring up the subject of having stories integrated into the speech, and I'm going to endeavor to do that more. I think one of the things that stories bring to it is the emotional content. That is a little bit different than the rational ideas, but the emotional content binds the speaker to the audience. So I appreciate you emphasizing that skill.
Okay, great. All right, so we can come back to this later, and I think at any time when we feel like we need to revisit this again, I think we can do it another few weeks, because there's a lot that we can cover when it comes to stories, and today we just kind of scratched the surface, and I think it was interesting that we all had a brief story to tell, and I think we need to practice more of that. So maybe in the future we can just have a segment where we just tell a story and make a point. But the difficulty is that we're not giving a whole speech, so the story is kind of isolated, but still it's a good way to practice. Okay, so I'm going to take a brief pause, and Julie, you're going to facilitate the next session. So I'm going to take a brief pause and then start that. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live episode number 8. And we're moving to segment number 2, and in this segment we're going to review a speech that one of us has recorded, a peer review speech here, and it's one of my speech that I had recorded I believe more than a year ago for this Coursera course called Introduction to Public Speaking. Now, this is a persuasive speech, and I believe that persuasive speech is the most difficult one, because it combines several things here, and it's a speech that I think really that everybody wants to really give, and it's not that easy, because you're not only bringing content, you're also bringing a lot of the techniques, delivery techniques, into the speech, so that people will remember it. People know exactly the main point you're making, and the way it's delivered is quite a bit different than a normal informative speech or even an impromptu speech. There are a lot of delivery techniques that have to be used for this speech. Like if you look at any of the persuasive speech, like Martin Luther King or Obama, they use many of these techniques, and I think I tried to use some of them, and we'll see how effective they were. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Julie to facilitate this segment. Julie, take over.
Okay, thanks. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Welcome, Soymyan. And looks like we lost Lathesh. So the second segment is about peer review. So in this segment, we learn how to use review process to improve our public speaking. Because as we speak, we learn a lot just by observing. We also learn how to communicate by listening and giving feedback. Finally, we learn leadership because we want to help facilitate the improvement of our peers and fellows. So we learn to communicate in a way that is empathetic, clear, and supportive of the person we want to help grow. And these are skills that's very communication, listening, speaking, leadership are really essential skills in life. So I want to thank Jay for helping us to practice that and to be so bravely offering himself to be the practice of our work. And today, Jay's speech, I know Soymyan and Lathesh and I have seen it, is about the 90-10, the 90%, and how he thinks that's a problem and what the solution it is in the U.S. governmental process. With this brief introduction, I'm going to turn over either to Lathesh or Soymyan. Please take about 2 minutes to 3 minutes to talk about what you think of the speech, what you heard, and then provide some constructive and positive suggestions. Which of you would like to start?
Just pick somebody.
Okay, Soymyan, why don't you go, and I'll let you know when it's 2 minutes, so you have a minute to wrap up. Is that okay?
Okay.
Great.
I think this is a speech in which Jay used a lot of those repetitions. That is one of the ways of trying to create an emotional appeal is to keep on saying the first part of the sentence is same and then you change the last word alone and that kind of a thing, repetition. I don't know what the name for that kind of technique is. So that he used very effectively. Then he also made a lot of emphatic hand gestures of impacting one palm with another and so on and so forth. Those kind of things. Okay, so that also tried to build up some kind of emotional energy. Okay, so then he was calling for action. He was asking people to come and join in terms of in the social groups, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and so on. And also he was even saying that it is not only supporting this kind of forums that you should do. You should also be able to contribute by donation and declare to take this movement forward in a much more stronger way. So he made a very strong appeal for action. So I think the linguistic embellishments that he did, and also the ending up with the very strong call for action, were a good way of finishing. Okay, so in fact he started very placidly, and as he went towards the end, the energy level and the emphasis level, etc., increased. That tempo increased. So initially he was focused on giving his 4 different classifications and explaining the problem, etc. So they were all on some kind of informative phase, and then he mounted this one on the emotional pitch and the action phase. So it was done nicely from that point of view. Yeah.
Great. Soymyan, would you like to take a minute to provide at least one constructive suggestion or advice how he can improve his speech?
I think I will say that after Latesh's talk. I will.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Lathesh, I'll give you a 2-minute time just so you know that.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Thanks, Soymyan too. So Here, Jay's speech about limiting the term in terms of the politicians getting re-elected, and then I think about 90% of them getting re-elected is so his problem statement was very clear, and the way he had structured the entire process, the entire talk was quite evident. It was well structured. So the objective or the problem statement was very clearly defined. He gave a lot of examples of how current situation in which the way Washington D.C. The politics that runs around in this in U.S. and how bringing about some changes would bring about a lot of positive impacts in various areas. So he had structured it in a very positive direction, positive way. And then after giving the problem statement, he immediately went into the solutioning aspects. And when, as Soumya mentioned, so Jay spoke about how to bring about a complete revolution, doing a lot of, I think he wanted to publicize a lot on the social media, do a campaign, a media campaign. So a lot of changes and bring new faces, etc. Amend the laws, amend the existing rules, etc. So there was a strong appeal. And in terms of body language, he was very good in bringing those positive thoughts across. So I found that to be a good talk with respect to understanding the American political dynamics there and how things are getting impacted. So that was a quite a good I think talk given by Jay. And an improvement area, one improvement area, if I had to tell, that is like see. He started off probably in a lower note, and then I think earlier also, the earlier talk also, that was the thing. So the initial impact has to be made in the early phase itself, so that we are drawn towards the talk completely. So that's the only thing. Otherwise, at the end, the statement which he made was like quite a good appeal, and I was personally, I think it was one of the good talk that he has given. So yeah, that's from me.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Latesh. Thanks, Latesh. That was
Yeah.
yeah.
Let me come back to give that.
Okay. Let me give my evaluation to you, and then I'll do another round of opinions, additional feedback, and stuff. Okay. Thanks, Soumyan. So yeah, I agree with Latesh and Soumyan, Jay, that this is one of my favorite speeches from you, in that I really felt the build up from the beginning to the end, and that your hand gestures, the tempo of your speech, the linguistic techniques that like such as repetition and emphasis, and finally your final voice volume really kind of were all synchronistically aligned to build up that message and that experience for us. In terms of the other thing that I really liked is I always like a circle. So I really appreciated that you started off with the Lincoln quote, and at the end endeavor to link that quote into endorsing us into some kind of action so that we can fulfill that vision that Lincoln had. And I thought that was a very powerful technique that you used. Okay, Soumyan, would you like to give a constructive feedback now?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I have heard a lot of speeches from Jay. I think he's actually a role model for how one can keep practicing and practicing and practicing. He's a relentless practicer. Okay, so I have heard him so many speeches. He keeps working on it. He keeps chipping away at some improvement or other, somewhere or other. He keeps doing. But so I do find from the early days to now, he has increased his repertoire of what all techniques he incorporates, etc., to a very large degree. One thought I had was I really had to think for finding out what to suggest, okay, in a constructive manner. See, I think if I look at his persona, his presence in the screen, he's somewhat, no, in terms of movement and things like that, he's a little normally very low in terms of movement and things like that. and he also keeps the voice level, tone level, which is more or less even. But in this, he increased it towards the end, etc. He increased his hand gestures, his emotional pitch, his voice modulation, etc. But then I feel, in a general sense, apart from that bringing up the angry voice or whatever it is, I think he can bring in a lot more of vocal variety in terms of maybe something can be sarcastic, something can be in some other mood. So he can do some voice acting kind of thing. It's almost like telling small children stories. When you tell them stories and you say the lion was roaring, you almost roar like the lion roars, and so on and so forth. So I think one of the things that Jay can benefit from is doing a lot of voice acting modulation deliberately. He perhaps has to pick some situations where he has an opportunity to do that and do that. Okay, so that would be a nice addition to Jay's repertoire.
Great, thanks. That was great. I appreciate you encouraging Jay to become even more dramatic and use his voice and his passion and just share that with us. So, Lathesh, would you like to add anything?
I agree with Soumyan. I think Jay is like a great speaker, and I think even when I hear him without looking at the video, when I am just hearing him out in the audio part also, he sounds really good. So he has, I think, built up that kind of expertise in this area. So and other things, like I think I already told him earlier also during the talk, like some kind of live examples or something like that, which can be pulled in, something unrelated to the topic, but some humor somewhere like that. Probably that's something I would like to suggest, but otherwise it's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Lathesh. I too bow to Jay. I guess we're all paying respect to Jay today.
Yeah, I'm about to write a couple of checks, several checks here.
Wait, I have constructive feedback too, Jay.
so you should be.
Hold on a second. So my constructive feedback to you, Jay, is it could be my listening skills. Is that it would have been very helpful for me if I knew the problems, how it caused suffering, and how your solutions remediate that suffering. And you could, for example, you could do a story that because of the extreme poverty of the 90% more people on the food lines, on food pantry. In America, the wealthiest country, how can we have food lines? And then you can perhaps say, because of representation, that the money equation will be changed so that there won't be so many people on poverty. And just as an example, so that my emotions are connected by a story, as you suggested in the beginning, to your problem, the problems you discuss, and the remedy. That's now you can write the check, Jay. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you.
Right. No, thank you very much for those that feedback. And the one thing I'll say is that, and I think Soymyan kind of hit it. I do practice a lot, and that's because I take speaking very seriously. That if you, and I think I told this to you, Julie, that if you're speaking, you have to ask yourself that you have to be a difference maker. Otherwise, why are you giving a speech? And that's what speaking is all about. If you're not a difference maker, then somebody can just read what you're saying, and that could do the same thing. So if you're given an opportunity to speak, whether it's one-on-one or even in this particular forum, you as a speaker have to be a difference maker. Otherwise, you're adding no value. You're just making noise. So that's the thing that I always try to follow. That if you're going to give a speech, then you have to add something to it that makes it worthwhile for people to listen to. And again, that means you may have to take some risks. And there's nothing wrong with taking risks, because speaking is taking risk. And that's one of the things we should do it on this show, take some risk, because otherwise nobody's going to remember anything that you say, because people forget things so quickly with all the distractions that we're under all the time. So that's my final point on that. So thanks a lot again.
Let me just add one side note to that. You see, I teach language speaking also. Japanese. I have put up some 48 videos on how to speak Japanese. Okay, so one of the things I found in that kind of situation is when you're trying to teach somebody a language, the one who learns to speak is the one who just doesn't care. If he makes a mistake and his others are going to look at it, laugh at it or whatever. You first have to overcome that kind of apprehension, saying that look, others may ridicule me or laugh at me or whatever, and then go on. In the initial days, nobody is going to be great. So it's only those who shed this kind of apprehension and things like that and keep working on improvement who ultimately become great. I would rather prefer to be ridiculed today and be praised tomorrow rather than be ridiculed tomorrow also and not having for not having practiced. Okay.
Excellent point. Yeah, I agree. As I was telling my daughter just recently that people cannot reject you. Rejection is an opinion. You can only reject yourself. So anyway, Julie, any closing thoughts before we move to the next segment?
Yes, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay, for being so generous and courageous. And I think we all enjoyed this segment a lot. And I want to just welcome other students to come and participate in communication, listening, speaking, and exercising leadership. So thanks again, Jay.
Right, Julie, thanks for doing a wonderful job. The one thing I will add before we move to the next segment is that this was a speech that I recorded for the course. I'm not sure whether I will ever get an opportunity to give this speech ever in public. So that's the only thing I kind of, because I put in a lot of effort on that speech. And it's okay, but anytime even when you're recording a speech, you should put in a lot of effort. But I would like an opportunity to actually give that speech live. So one day that can happen. All right, so we're going to move to the next, take a brief pause, and then we'll move to the third segment. And I think, Julie, you have to leave in about 15 minutes, so that's fine. Just we'll let you talk first then, okay? Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode number 8, segment number 3. And in this segment, the last segment, we typically look at a famous speaker and review their speech and see what we can learn from their speech, some of the techniques they use, and how effective they were in giving that speech. So for today's segment, the speech that I have picked out is a speech that was given in 1952 by Richard Nixon, and this is commonly known as the Checkers speech. And the reason why it's called Checkers was because he introduces this dog that they had received. The daughter named him Checkers. Now, the reason I like this speech is for many reasons. I think this is one of the best political speech ever given for its intended purpose. And there is a real metrics behind this speech, and this was recorded this was done live in 1952. So we're talking about the infancy of television age. And according to everything, this was the first time a politician actually had to go on front of TV to save his political life, and that's exactly what Richard Nixon faced with this speech. And if you've done if you know anything about this, there was some scandal where there was some fund that was allocated, and he used that fund for political purposes. And Nixon, if you know anything about Richard Nixon, is one of the most fascinating characters in American history. Everybody pretty much has a low, kind of a variance, which is kind of in between, right? Short, like limited. Nixon had a very high variance. He had an amazing talent for greatness, and he had an amazing talent for self-destruction. This was one of those things where he showed his amazing talent for greatness. And what he essentially did with this speech was he basically was able to stay on the ticket because Eisenhower at that time was the nominee, and he had picked Richard Nixon to be his vice president candidate. And when this scandal broke, there was an outcry by many people, and a lot of them were his enemies, because Richard Nixon, if you know, and people in India know Richard Nixon quite well, that he was not a very friendly person when it came to India. Either you liked him or you hated him, and there were a lot of people that hated Richard Nixon. And this was his opportunity to get in front of TV to convince the American nation that he should remain on the ticket. And there are a lot of things he does in this speech are just remarkable. But if you notice it, that he starts out, he kind of just tells people, you can see this guy is so desperate that he'll do anything to stay on the ticket. That's what I look at this speech. He's telling about how much money he's made, how poor they are, how his wife is sitting right there. I mean, there's nothing he didn't do in this speech to rebate. And then in the middle, he brings in this dog, which is kind of inconsequential, but he brings it in this speech. Julie, can you mute your line?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And then if you notice it, after that, he actually gets up, and he even turns that speech into like a political statement why Eisenhower should be elected. So as you can see, that he has multiple audience that he's trying to reach in this speech. One, the one that mattered is Eisenhower, right? Because it's his decision, and he's not sure whether he wants to keep him on the ticket or get rid of him, okay? He's at this point like, I don't want to get involved in this controversy. So Eisenhower has basically left it to the American people to decide whether he should keep Nixon. So Nixon now has to convince Eisenhower that he needs to be on the ticket, but at the same time, he needs to convince the American people. Now, to convince the American people, he needs to bring in some element that will really resonate with them. And he kind of shares his personal wealth, which he says is nothing. He talks about how, how a great public servant he is. And then he says, look, they're even trying to get her to take my dog away. That just can't happen. And at the end of the speech, there were 2 million telegrams that were sent. And get this, 99.6% were in favor of Richard Nixon. So only 0.4 were against Richard Nixon after that speech. And at the end, he remained on the ticket and served as the vice president for 8 years. So there is a lot to learn in this speech, and this is another thing that a lot of us miss. That when you're giving a speech, you need to know what the audience really it will resonate with them. It doesn't matter what you think, how well it's organized, what are the important points you're making. And with Nixon's speech, the thing that really resonated with the people who were, or the audience, people who were watching it, was the checkers. That's the part they could really understand. That, hey, you are beating this guy up, and now you even want to take his dog away. We just can't allow that to happen. And, there's a metric here. 99.6% of the people who sent telegrams were in favor of Richard Nixon. So at this point, I will turn over to Julie, you, to give your feedback, what you thought of the speech, and what did you learn from it?
First of all, I apologize for the alarm. I didn't realize I hadn't muted the phone because I was so engaged in listening to Jay. Yeah, because I lived in the States during the impeachment period, I have to say that this powerful speech, looking back now, there's a feeling of being manipulated. So in terms of the power of the speech, I think that when he invoked children and dogs, and the story, he really made that connection of emotional connection. And I think the other powerful construct that he used is he said, I would say it's wrong, but then he added the word if, and then he did a flip-flop. So it's almost like he gets you set, and then he bends you. So that is a very powerful construct. I'm going to see how to work with that construct. And finally, I think he did an evasive technique because he said it's wrong because it's immoral. And so by invoking morality, what he did was he bypassed the legality issue. And so he's almost saying morality is higher order than legality, and I don't need to be legal. And I think that's a very manipulative and invasive technique, and in some ways, uh, it could be his real personal opinion about morality, and that at the end he thought he was larger than the law. And so I thought it was very interesting that he implied that without even using the word legality, to frame his speech of his moral correctness so we can buy into it through symbolism and emotional connections of children's stories and animals.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was, yeah, you are correct. It's manipulative, because that's another thing about stories that we did not get to cover, that stories can be very manipulative if you are trying to manipulate people's thinking about you, people's overall perception. And in this case, I think he's fighting for survival here, and at this point, he's willing to do anything. And that's what Nixon was. He was willing to do anything. And sometimes that did come back later, and it kind of shows you his personality, too, that he's willing to bring something that is quite trivial, but should he have brought it into the speech, rather than just making his case. But I thought he was pretty clever, because he's looking at it saying, look, I'm fighting for my life here, and if I don't bring in everything that's available, everything including kitchen sink, to save my life, he did it. And I thought that's why I think this is a very interesting speech. Soymyan, do you have anything, you want to add something?
Yeah, I have quite a few things to say on this. When I initially saw this video, I was quite surprised that American vice presidential candidate could have been so poor. Okay, so the numbers he quoted and in terms of dollars and all that thing seemed to be so small. Okay, so I was a little surprised about that. But then anyway, this was in the very early days, 1952 or something like that. You said, okay, maybe in those days the dollar value was like that. I remember maybe it was all 8 rupees a dollar or something like that around that time. Okay, fine. Still, then some of this checkers stuff did not come out as such a big, kind of point to me. When I heard the whole story and then said the checkers stuff was, supposed to be the turning point, I just could not believe. It didn't somehow appeal to me as such a major point in the whole thing. Of all the things that he mentioned, this is one thing where he almost said, say, look, I'm not going to give it back. Some kind of a emphatic refusal to give back, even if the whole world was going to go say he has to return. Okay, so that's a kind of a drama he made. That's the only point in which he made that kind of a defiant note. I think he chose that to give that weight. Okay, then I also noticed that he not only went on to praise Eisenhower and things like that as one of his deliberate points. He also went on to attack the opposition, and if he was having allegations made against him, in that speech he was making allegations about others without saying that they had a problem. He said, look, these are the areas where they need to perhaps come as openly as I have done, bring their salary statement, wealth statements and things like that. If he was a poor guy and the other guy was a wealthier person, he was definitely sort of taunting him and further trying to manipulate by making the other guy to look like a very rich a fellow and create that difference. So you was taunting him to say, look, why didn't you come up with some of your own statements, because there may be a suspicion that you also had something to something that you had done wrong. Maybe the people who donated to you received favors from you. That's the kind of suggestion he made. The other point I thought was, this was one of the early points, but then I'm mentioning it late. When we talked about the speech methodology, we say something is a performance-oriented speech, something is a communication-oriented speech. Perhaps this topic and things like that were suitable for a communication orientation, but he still, he was sort of from memory. He was reciting a very thoroughly memorized speech, and that was very, very obvious. Okay, so when you are making a speech so obviously as a performance-oriented speech, that the candor and the candidness and things like that kind of a sentiment doesn't come along. I somehow felt that that kind of prepared speech delivery with his wife also sitting stiff there by the side, those things did go well. And the last thing I want to say is there are some 2 or 3 places where he was sort of about to smile and he was controlling the smile or whatever it is. They were not, I thought that maybe he could not control himself and he had some difficulty. He smiled in some 2 places in inappropriate ways, the way I felt. I must perhaps relook at that to evaluate this, but my first impression is perhaps he had some very uncomfortable smiles in some places. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, those are excellent points. And Nixon always had that awkwardness, so that you pointed out, and that came through in this in this speech. Lathesh, I'll let you give your thoughts before we have more discussion on this.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Those were really good points, Soumya, you also pointed out. For me, I think from the angle from where Richard Nixon is actually coming up with this TV audition is mainly he's trying to save his political career, which is almost being maligned, and he's being smeared with a lot of allegations of laundering money for political aspirations. So he's trying to save himself, and also because he was running for the vice presidentship election along with Eisenhower. So it's like even Eisenhower's career was getting impacted by this allegation. So it becomes quite imperative for him to bring out the personal aspects into the picture, and the entire program, the entire event, for me it looked like an image building exercise. It was more like it was completely already it was like planned what could be the speech, that the contents that need to be given out, how to actually shape the entire structure, and the all the points. So you can see that he was reading out to papers in the initial first part, then he slowly moved on to make it a bit more realistic. Then showing briefly his wife sitting beside him. So that was like appealing to the common masses, appealing to the normal the citizens. And he gave an important point, like God loves common man, and that's why he made many of them. So those kind of liners are like straight and directly hitting the common man. So for any person, for any common individual who would be watching this particular event in way back in 1952, that's like quite a long time back, when as Jay mentioned, when the television was in the nascent phases, etc. Even at that point of time, when there is such a beautiful image building exercise going on, and that too for the one of the most highest posts in the world. I mean, Vice President of United States is like a huge stature. So the way the entire the interview was conducted, the way he was talking about the allegations, he was pointing out the counter allegations which he was making against his opponents, etc. So those were like really setting the context, and he's trying to bring the point across that he is not guilty, and it's just that he has been he has been made a scapegoat rather. And look, and he brought out his personal aspects, the way he has his bank balance and how much he's spending on his insurance, and small things which are like very maybe pertinent to his financial stature, but may not, if you really look into it, as Soumya mentioned, it may not be the real picture, but then that's how he projected it, and it worked well for him. Definitely it made an impact. The checkers part, which came in the last segment, wherein he brought about that he is not, even if it came as a gift to him, and he's not ready to give it out, and his daughter really likes it and all, and he has just made a dramatic point there, and I think that makes the entire talk became known as the checkers speech, just because of that particular emotional appeal that he gave to his talk. So very powerful speech is what I would say, and it really appealed to the mass at that point of time, giving such a talk. Thanks.
Yeah, no, those are excellent points, Lathesh. I think something you pointed out, which I did not mention, is that word common man. I think that is what he was trying to. And there are 2 points you made that were really good. One is that uh, Dwight Eisenhower had a stellar reputation. Here's the person who was the supreme Allied commander during World War II. You can't get anything higher than that, okay, in any country. He won a World War II, okay, at the end of the day. And he's now a presidential nominee to be the president. So his reputation cannot be tarnished in any way by having Nixon. So this was Nixon's way of saying that, I don't want Eisenhower to be affected, but look at me. I'm clean as you're going to get. Look at me. I have no money. I don't even make money. He's talking about his bonds. He has no stocks and bonds, his salary, how much he had, houses he owns, and everything. I mean, there's nothing he doesn't tell us about him, right? And I think what you said is absolutely correct. His audience is not the intelligentsia, is not the journalist. His audience are the people that are watching it. They're the ones who are going to determine whether he stays on the ticket or not, because Eisenhower is no fool either. He wants to be elected as the president. And if he doesn't keep Nixon on the ticket, right, so he's kind of boxed Eisenhower in with this speech now, He's saying, hey, Eisenhower, you may, because remember, if Eisenhower is putting him to give the speech, that means he has some reservation. Otherwise, why do it, right? He could easily say, this guy's a World War II Supreme Allied Commander. If he says, I want Nixon on my ticket, I don't see anything wrong, he would never even have to give the speech. So by Eisenhower putting him on and putting him in this situation, and by the way, Nixon did not have that much time to prepare for this speech, okay? That is one of the things. Actually, there's this book I have here, right here. There's a lot of little information in this book about that particular speech. And he did not have a lot of time to work with. In fact, he was supposed to give this speech after the show I Love Lucy, which was very popular worldwide at that time in the United States. And then, of course, I Love Lucy is popular all over the world with Lucille Ball. The other thing why checkers, and again, I'm not sure if this comes through because this is interesting because you're adding some Indian perspective to this. Checkers is a very important part simply because in America, people love pets. It's a huge industry in America, okay? I have my neighbor, and I just saw him just yesterday, and he has a dog. This guy has 2 sons. I've never seen him taking care of his son. They're all grown up now. But every day he walks his dog twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And I'm so jealous of his dog, the way he takes care of him. I'm like, that dog's got such an amazing life. And that's what it is in this country. People really, really love their pets. And that's the reason why Nixon brought in checkers. It may not go well with people outside U.S. perhaps, but in America, if you bring in dogs, there's a saying in this country that if you want a friend in Washington, D.C., if you want a friend, get a dog in Washington, D.C., because there are no friends in D.C., okay? Everybody's out to get you. So that's why all presidents from, I don't know from when, they always have a dog. Without a dog, you cannot be a president. Even if Obama didn't have a dog, Ted Kennedy actually gave him a gift of a dog. Now he has that dog named Bo, and I think he has another dog now. There are 2 of them because they also have to have a friend too, right? A dog by himself cannot, then they have nobody to play with. So dogs are very important in American culture. So anyway, I don't know if that is true in India or not. I don't know if Indian prime ministers have dogs and stuff, but in America, a president, and it's interesting. They have this Air Force One, and a dog just goes right through Air Force One and roams around the whole plane by himself, and nobody says anything. The dog has more freedom in this country, a president's dog, than even president's kids. Anyway, any closing thoughts?
Interesting mention about the importance of pets in USA. Jay, I never realized that. Maybe my insensitivity to the checkers thing was because perhaps in India pets are not really so important. Okay, fine.
No, nice I have a uncle, and they had a dog named Haley. And they're Indians, but once they came here, they're all like everybody's American, right? And they actually went and bought do you know what an RV is? Recreational vehicle?
Yeah.
Those are big. Those are big vehicles that you use in this country. They're pretty big. I'm not sure how big they're in India, but they're huge. They're like a bus practically, okay, where you can go place to place and travel, right, and then park it at some campsite, and sometimes you can even have a trailer and have a car, right? And they actually bought that. I think they spent over $100,000. I don't even remember. It was a really nice little RV that they bought, specifically so that when they travel, they can take their dog with them.
Oh, okay.
And the dog unfortunately died a few years ago, and it was like one of the saddest day of their life. So pets it's a huge industry in America. Pets are a big industry, and dogs are at the top. Dogs are at the top, then cats, and then you'll have other things. So if you ever talk to an American, always bring up pets, because that's a very good topic to talk to them about. So what kind of, I go to a park every day and I see people, and for me to get a conversation with people, all I have to do is ask them about their dog, and it's amazing how many interesting people you met. A while back, there was a captain. He was a captain on the U.S. Aircraft carrier. He was a war hero, and he rescued dogs. He rescued basset hounds, and at one time the dog needed a surgery, some leg. The dog had some problem with the leg, and he spent $6,000 to get the dog the surgery it needed so the dog can be able to walk. And after the dog started walking, the dog did not live too long, but he went and spent $6,000. It's just amazing stories about how much people in America care for their pets. They're almost like, sometimes they mean more to them than their kids, actually. Lathesh, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, Jay, I do echo Soumyan's thoughts actually about pets, especially in Indian context. It is like something we probably don't appreciate too much. Those who own pets, definitely they love it. And now in like in India, we have Maneka Gandhi, who had actually brought in a lot of
You're breaking up.
How to take care of pets and not to be, and in can you hear me, Jay?
Yeah, you were breaking up. Okay, yeah, you were saying something about Maneka Gandhi, and she has a pet or something?
No, she had brought about laws for protection of animals, cruelty to prevent cruelty to animals. And in that context, in Kerala, we have our chief minister here has started one campaign for killing. I mean, it's more like he's trying to contain the population of stray dogs in Kerala. So some culling methods, etc., is going to be done. So just recently, I got an email from somebody who was starting a petition against that on change.org, and I am somebody who is completely for avoiding this kind of stray incidents, which is very rampant in India in most of the cities, towns, etc., where it is very dangerous actually to have stray dogs just roaming around. So yeah, in Indian context, we probably don't appreciate too much of having pets, but I think it was an eye opener for me regarding the American way of looking at pets.
Yeah, and that's the main reason why Nixon brought it into this speech, because once you bring up a dog, then people understand that. They may not understand all the other stuff about the finances, this and that, and that's the reason why I thought that speech was very clever, because he's trying to achieve an objective, and his objective was to survive. And at that point, it didn't matter what he brought in. So my point was that that's something to learn. You need to know what your audience is really looking for, because they're only going to remember one thing, and based on the results, when you saw the telegrams that came in, he got 99.6% in favor of his speech, and that's the result. I mean, that's those are the facts. So at this point, if there are no comments, we'll close out this segment, and then we'll just close out the show, okay?
Great, Jay. Everything is fine. I think we can close down.
Okay, so Soymyan, if somebody wants to reach out to you, is there a email or anything? And
no, email etc. is continuing to work. There is no problem. It's only the video, audio related thing. Either one of them seems to be going wrong and things like that. That's how things have been changing.
okay, yeah, this show's gone a little longer, so I appreciate you guys staying till the end. And Lathesh, again, any closing thoughts before we close out this show?
I think, Jay, this again, the agenda which was given today was really good, and the videos that we saw about Richard Nixon and even you giving the talk about the term for candidates in Washington DC is like superb. So I think you're doing a great job, and I would appreciate more individuals to see us performing here and come and participate with us. So
right.
Good.
So
and I can be reached on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I can be reached at my ID Lathesh balakrishna.lathesh@gmail.com. So yeah.
Right, and I usually put that when you guys are introducing in the opening. I actually take the annotation and put your email there, so people can. That's when they're likely to do that. So anyway, I'll always give the chance that if there's anything, if somebody reaches till the end and they wanted to somehow get in touch with you, because you guys are in India, so there might be somebody from Kerala who might say, hey, can we get together for a coffee or something? Hey, if you come up with any speeches that you want to include, let me know, okay? I just don't want to keep on bringing the speeches that I come across. So if you come across a speech or any topic or any sharing somebody's speech, and reach out to people that you know if they want to come on the show or if they want to just watch it and participate. It's open, okay?
Sure.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for staying till the end. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Soymyan.
Bye.
Hopefully you can get your
Bye.
videos fixed soon.
Bye.
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 Okay, I'll close it out.
Bye.
All right.